We often say that people are our greatest asset, but most companies treat HR as an afterthought. Our guest today is changing that narrative. You're tuning in to Adapt AI podcast spotlight series where we feature the change makers and disruptors shaping the future and growth of business. My name is Haley, and our guest today is the safety net. He brings Fortune 500 HR strategy to Main Street businesses, helping them protect their assets and build winning culture, which is the key. He is the founder of HR Kyle Patrick Smith. Kyle, welcome. Thanks for joining
Thank you
us.
so much, Haley. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here today. And I tell you what, I've been looking forward to this conversation. So I'm ready.
So do I. Yes. So to get us started, can you just give us a brief background? How did you go from the corporate world to being the HR guy for entrepreneurs?
Exactly. I think this will relate well to our discussion today. So I spent a little bit over 25 years in corporate HR and I loved it. As soon as I became aware many, many years ago of what HR did and what it could do, I immediately fell in love with the profession and steadily worked my way up to the highest roles in HR within the companies that I represented. And it was a wonderful ride.
Mhm,
But one of the things that became very apparent to me
mhm,
through both my personal experiences and those around me is there are wonderful companies to work for. There are okay companies to work for. And unfortunately, there are some companies that aren't so good to work for.
mhm,
And what became very important to me as I navigated my career
mhm,
is that I be associated with organizations that I legitimately want to work for. Because to be in that HR seat, you're
mhm,
striking that fine balance between representing the company and representing employees. But if there's a
mhm,
disconnect from a people standpoint with that organization and that leadership, I'm going to struggle in my role. I'm not going to enjoy it.
mhm,
So, what I discovered was really the best way that I could make a positive impact on this world of work as we know it is
mhm,
to really strike out on my own and work with organizations around this topic, like you just said. Let's prove to employees that they're our most important asset. Let's do the things that demonstrate that to them rather than just having these shallow words that we put on a piece of paper and hang on the wall. So
mhm,
that's what brought me to forming HR Kyle Services. We've been
mhm.
at it now a little bit over a year, and we've been working with organizations to say, let's create workforces that people legitimately want to work in.
Thank you for that introduction. Now, um, since you mentioned that you shifted to doing it on your own in order for you to be more aligned with organizations that you know, have the same values that you hold as well as an HR expert and professional. What, when you got started with your own business, what are some of the example of small businesses gap that you saw in the market that where HR is currently being underserved?
Yeah, great question. My gosh, we could spend a whole episode on this, but I promise you, I'll keep it reasonably brief. So,
Okay.
a couple of areas that we notice that there's a huge gap is a lot of organizations when they think of human resources, they think, okay, that's who manages our benefits and who handles the payroll, and they have these nice neat policies, and they throw some parties throughout the year and so on.
Mm,
And we saw that. And again, first off, that's a that's selling the profession so short. Secondly, the thing that we've known and the message continues to come out there, and
mm,
it's something we want to work on is so many people when they think of HR, especially as employees,
mm,
they think of us as the bad guy. So we're the ones that come in and we tell you that you've lost your job, or we're the ones that enforce those rules to make sure that you fall into alignment and so on.
mm, mm,
And they don't see our role as being one, as I mentioned earlier, that we do, yes, we represent the company's interests, but we're also there to represent employees' interests. So
mm,
those are two areas that I really saw a huge gap. One, from the company's perspective to say, hey, these people are only good to do our payroll and handle our benefits. And then from
mhm,
the employee standpoint, hey, these people are only here to tell me I don't have a job or tell me I did something wrong. And anyone that really has a passion for HR, as I do, we know that that's a complete misrepresentation as to what the profession really wants to do, but certainly can do.
Mhm. And we talked about this previously, but I'd love for you to share it with our audience as well, because you mentioned something about HR as it is on an employee's standpoint, that they're the ones who's going to tell me the bad news.
Yeah.
But when they're not performing well, there are so many factors to it. Maybe it wasn't the right fit. Was the HR team already in place in the organization, especially, when with small businesses? Was it already in place to begin with, or was it the founder or the business owner himself
Yeah.
who actually picked um that team member, right? When essentially there should be someone who is like an expert that you are, to be able to navigate the initial or the foundation of building that business. With that being said, um, founders are often great at, vision, but terrible at hiring. What is the biggest red flag you see in a candidate during an interview or during the hiring process that most founders miss?
Here's the thing. There's a big difference between interviewing and doing the job. And I think where so many people and founders get caught up in this as much as anything,
Mm,
they fall prey to, wow, this person interviews so well.
mm,
But let's not lose sight of the fact that we're interviewing them to determine if they're a good fit for the job. And
mm,
again, two different scenarios. You know who some of the best interviewers are? Salespeople. But that doesn't mean necessarily they're going to be good in selling your product or your service. So I
mm.
see a lot of mistakes, especially with salespeople, because they always interview well, right? Because they're
Mm.
extroverted, they know how to talk, they tell stories really well, and so on. But
Right.
then we fall into that trap to say, well, do they seem like they could sell this product? They could sell this service. So one of the biggest traps I see is this founder says, "Oh, I know people, I know how to interview, this, that, and the other, and oh, Haley just seems like such a good person."
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're not hiring good people. That's not, we haven't said, okay, here's the job posting. Hiring good people. We're hiring people that can be effective in doing the job that we need them to do. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a big difference there. So, where does HR come in? HR is the force that says, whoa, hold on here, Mr. and Mrs. Founder. What are you looking for in this job?
Mm-hmm.
Not, are they nice? Do they smile well? Do they shake your
Mm-hmm.
hand? No. What are the things that are going to make this person successful in whatever the job it is? So we put them on the spot and we say, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Founder, let's list the 5 or 6 things that are important to that person in doing this job well. And guess what? Now we're going to formulate our questions and our conversations in the interview
Mm-hmm.
around that.
Mm-hmm.
Not that Haley walked in and she has such a nice smile and she just seems like such a nice girl. And oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh, her parents grew up in the area. None of that's relevant. Haley is a wonderful girl, but can she do this job we're looking to hire her for?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we make sure we interview. So, and not to belabor the point, but that's the biggest things I see. The person falls prey to the personality versus the performance.
And I'm curious about that because, I've watched several episodes. I read about businesses and leadership as well. And some would say, I think I may have heard it from Alex Hermosi or his wife, that, it's important to have someone who has good character as well, because someone could be really excellent at their job. They're performing well, but they're dragging the entire team down in their morale because they're not good with their character. That they could be, they tend to be either bossy or, you know,
Mhm.
um, shift their way around the system a little bit just because they're performing well and they're adding to the numbers.
Yeah.
How does HR come into play with that, and how do you, reassess if this is
Mhm.
someone that should be continued as a team member?
Yep. So it goes back to that conversation again. And again, the most important part of interviews is all of this preparation that we're talking about because
Mm,
we've aligned now, we've said, okay, here are the 5 or 6 things that are critical to this role. And what we then talk with our leaders about is we say, okay, let's formulate questions that find out about this. And Mr. and Mrs. Leader, what we're looking for in those responses is for that person to tell us past stories of where they've been in the same or a similar situation. And
Mhm.
then we work with our leaders to say, okay, listen to these stories. What are you hearing in this person's story? What are they telling you? Right?
Mhm.
So I'm going to give you a quick example.
Mhm.
So let's say the leader says, we want someone that can juggle multiple tasks effectively. They've got to be able to do this. They've got to be able to juggle multiple tasks. I'm giving you a simple example.
Mhm.
So we formulate a question. We say something like, Haley, please tell me about a time in a job that you had where you were required to juggle multiple priorities and still be effective in your work. Okay, so that's the question to Haley. So
Mhm.
you see, we've already formulated, say, tell me about a time. So we've
Mhm.
already told Haley, give us an example. Haley,
Mhm.
think back to your work history and give us an example. And then when Haley tells that story,
Mhm.
Haley is sharing details of how she did that. And then that's where we become it, the listening skills really become important because we're listening for things such as, did she work well with others? Did she seem to use the systems that the company provided with her? The example she gave required her to work with different departments. Does it seem like she did that? And so you're listening for those things to say, did she seem to do those things well? Was there conflict there? Because here's the critical thing, Haley, that we can never lose sight of with interviewing, right? One critical thing.
Mhm.
The best predictor of future performance is past performance in the same or similar situation. Okay. Because
Mhm.
humans work off muscle memory. And
Mhm.
believe it or
Right.
not, and we hate to admit this sometimes because we like to think, we're so unique and so on. But human behavior becomes very predictable over time. And think
Mhm.
about this for a moment. How many of your listeners, and I bet you fall into this category too, if you go into a workplace, I'll guarantee you leave your house almost exactly at the same time every day. You take almost exactly the same route every day. You park in almost exactly the same parking spot every day. Your routine when you walk in the building is almost exactly the same every day, and you're nodding.
We're creatures of habit.
We are creatures of habit, and that holds true to situations that we encounter.
Mhm.
So if we're looking for people that can work well with others and deal with conflict effectively and all those things, guess what? We ask them questions about when they've done it in the past. We
Mhm.
listen to the answers and we say, yes, that's how I would want Haley to handle it if she worked here. And Haley, I don't mean to oversimplify it, but quite honestly, that's what it comes down to. But you can see we put a lot of time and effort into the preparation before we
Mhm.
ever sit in front of Haley to ask these
Mhm.
kind of questions.
Right. The important questions to ask. And more importantly would be how the answers translate into. And it takes someone who has been like yourself in the industry for like over 20 years to really listen into those cues, whether
Yep.
just for your example, previous experiences, similar situation in navigating multitasking.
Yeah.
It could be tricky actually because just because it's multitasking doesn't mean that a person is productive, right? How
Yes.
does the person or that candidate actually prioritize tasks, urgent versus important, urgent
Exactly.
and important?
Right.
So being able to identify those cues, only
So true.
someone who's specializing in human relations, because
Yep.
that's the word itself, the psychology and the behavior of humans.
Exactly.
Could
And
identify.
Haley, you hit on something there too. And again, see how this naturally flows, right? See how this is just, and this is what our training looks like. This is me working with you as you are a leader of a company. This is exactly how it goes. And notice how you've already said, without me ever saying a word, that you want to focus on the results. So then I say to you, Haley, if that candidate doesn't tell you what happened next, you ask them. So say they tell you their story, yeah, I've juggled all these things. This is what blah, 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 blah. And they
Mhm.
don't say what happened. Then you come back to me and say, well, Haley, thank you for walking me through that. So in that particular example, Haley, what happened there? Like, what was the end result of you doing these things? So see, then you're looking for the results. And again, like we were saying, you're comparing that to what you want to hear, right? So let's say Haley ends that and says, you know what, Mr. Smith, as a result of doing that, I was able to take on more work. I was able to just get so much more done in a 40-hour work week and so on. And, as a result, it eventually led to me getting a promotion, et cetera, et cetera. That's the answer we want to hear, right? Versus a person says, well, you know what? I'm still trying to figure that out a little bit. I'm getting better at multitasking, but, some things fell through the cracks. That's where now we're able to make a judgment on that answer. So hey, here you are now as leader taking notes during the interview and saying, okay, is working on skills, but not quite there yet. Okay, that's not the answer we want to hear. And then you go to the next question. You ask, okay, what's the next thing you want to talk about with this person?
Mhm.
And maybe it's, project management. So we formulate a question on that, and then you ask that. So see how this begins to naturally flow. But
Right.
notice too how easy it is for you as a leader to then, oh God, okay, now I get the hang of this. Now I know what I'm looking for. But
Mhm.
that's where I come in because I'm the one who's done it many times. I've worked with many, many leaders in different places. I
Mhm.
don't claim to know your business. You're going to know your business a lot more than me. You're going to know what those roles need to do. All I'm
Mhm.
helping you do is bring those things out so we make sure that ultimately you achieve the goals that you're looking to achieve, hiring the right people.
Speaking of hiring the right people, how important is culture in an organization in your over 2 decades of
Yeah.
experience? As you've mentioned at the beginning that, you've been with a company who's not really that good when it comes to their structure or how they run things, their policies, and you've been with like great companies as well. So, how important is it?
Well, the way I describe it is first thing I say to leaders is in culture, I also interchange a little bit with personality. Okay.
Mm,
And what I tell them first and foremost, and again, you're the leader. So I'll say, Haley, first thing I want to say to you is no, whether you realize it or not, this organization has a culture, it has a personality. And
mm,
the other thing that I'll say to you, Haley, is and just so we're clear, Haley, a lot of times when I talk to leaders such as yourself, they have one belief or interpretation of the culture, but
mm,
many times it's different for employees.
mm,
And they have exactly that reaction that you have. It's like, oh, wow, you know what? That makes sense. I've never thought of that. Because let's face it, CEOs, presidents, those higher up people, they experience organizations differently from us rank and file, right?
mhm.
Your experience in an organization is never going to mirror the CEO or the president organization, and neither is mine. Even in my role, it's, my
Mhm.
experience with the organization is going to be different. So when we talk about that, the one thing that we work with leaders on is say, let us come in. Let us begin to understand what this culture is, and we can
Mhm.
interpret back to you. Because so many times, as an HR professional, I've come into an organization and I've talked with the leader and I get a feel for them. And then I begin to get to know the organization. And, that's going out, that's talking to people, that's hearing the interactions, that's spending time out there. And a couple of weeks go by, and I'll meet back with that leader and I'll say, you know what? Some of the things that you think about this organization are correct, but I will also tell you that some of the things that you think about this organization are actually incorrect. And here's
Mm,
what employees really experience in working here. And many times they're surprised to hear that.
mhm.
And the good leaders are open to hearing that. Say, okay, okay, great, Kyle. Tell me more. Tell me how what you've learned, and then we take the next step to say, okay, let's talk about now what that means to people being successful. And I'll give you a quick example. I
Okay.
promise. So I'm thinking of a particular organization I worked with. They're a tech company. They still, they've been around for a long time, but they still have a startup feel. Okay, the people that come into that organization, I don't care what the role is, they've got to be comfortable with that. Okay. Because it's much less formal. People even dress less formal. The interactions many times are happening in hallways. Meetings are supposed to start at noon. They sort of start at 12:05 and
Mhm.
so there are people that are going to do very well in that kind of organization. But you and I also know more than a few people that aren't going to do well. And guess what? They may be tremendous marketing people, tremendous salespeople, tremendous accountants, whatever it is.
Mhm.
But they are not going to do well in that environment because they're not going to like that looser structure and the lack of formality. So
Mhm.
they may be very good at their job, but that culture is not a good fit for them. So we have to make sure one, that we truly understand what the culture is. And then
Mm-hmm.
number two, we take that into account in our hiring. And again, guess what we do? We guess what we do in those interviews? We tell the candidate, Haley, let me tell you a little bit about who we are and what we're about.
Mm-hmm.
And then Haley, one thing I need is, talk to me. What are your feelings about that? What are your feelings about this culture? And this is kind of how we get things done and so on. Talk to me a little bit about your past experiences and working in that. And
Mm-hmm.
then guess what? We listen to the answer.
Mm-hmm.
And if we hear Haley start to, yeah, boy, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know about meetings starting late like that. And I don't know, I like to have things on my schedule and I don't like to just people drop into my office. Guess
Yeah,
what?
not a good
Haley's
fit.
telling us she's not a good fit for the role. But you know what we've done? And this is a funny thing, Haley, I kid you not. I have to coach, I have to coach interviewers to ask those questions because so many times, early on, I learned this lesson. I'll ask a supervisor, or whatever, hey, how'd the interview go? Well, this and that and the other, but I just don't know about this thing. And I'll say, well, did you ask them about it? Well, no, you got to
Mm-hmm.
ask. If I want to know how Haley's going to do something or function in a particular environment or whatever it is, I'm just going to ask her. And I'm going to give her the opportunity to respond to it. And I'm going to listen to that answer. So we have to do that with culture. It has to come into play because that's only fair to that person.
Yeah.
To me, part of an interview process is what I call a realistic job preview. I want to share as much information with Haley so she knows who we are as a company, how we interact,
Mm-hmm.
how we get things done, what her role looks like, where it fits in, how
Mm-hmm.
important it is, who she's going to work with. I want her to know all that stuff. You know why? Because there's nothing worse than what I call buyer's remorse. We hire that candidate, they've been there for a couple of weeks, and the person says, what have I gotten myself into? We don't want that, right?
Right.
Because,
Right.
think about how much that sets the organization back if we put a person in a role that they're not a good fit for. That
Mm-hmm.
puts us back terribly. Where if we would have just waited another week and hired the right person, we're already down that path because once the person starts, we start making an investment in them, right? We start
Mm-hmm.
investing in training, we get them set up in our systems. There's a lot of work that happens. We sure as heck don't want to repeat that process again anytime soon.
Yeah.
So,
I
so I've rambled a little bit. I'm going to shut up and let you ask your next question.
No, it just brings me back to a point in time when I train someone one-on-one for a customer service role, but
Mhm.
he initially applied for a an outbound role, outbound phone
Mm,
calls. And
yep.
because there was a freeze hiring in that department, for some reason, the HR department of that company decided to realign him to this role for him to just go through the training. And then tell you what, even with a one-on-one, sometimes he would still fall asleep, and I wouldn't take it because of me, because I think that I'm good at training. It's just that I don't think that his interest is there. So to keep him engaged, it's gonna be a challenge. It's gonna be a long drag if it really wasn't the right fit. And I really appreciate you sharing that tip and insight about, it's not just the HR person or the talent acquisition person to be asking that question about or sharing um, insights about the culture of the company. It's also good if anyone who's listening here, if you're looking to join another company, to ask that question as well. What's the culture like in this company? How do you
Exactly.
operate? Because then it would be a good um, insight to have as well. Whether how do I come into play in this circle? Do I?
Well, and Healy, remember, we do this in all other facets of life. So I don't know, we've got to make sure it's second nature in our organizations as well.
Mhm,
If you were living in, and I'm not sure where you live, but if you lived in the climate that I live in, which is in Ohio, northern Ohio, we have all the four seasons. And one of those seasons that really hits us hard is that one known as winter.
mhm.
Now, if my wardrobe only included, short sleeve shirts and shorts, I'm not going to
Linen.
be well prepared for this environment. Not at all, right? And employees are the same way.
Mhm,
Yeah, I can live here, I can drive, I can do all the things that are important to living in Northeast Ohio. But if it doesn't fit my wardrobe style, how I want to dress, then I'm not going to be a good fit for you. It's the same way in organizations.
Mhm.
That person may, as I said, may have all the skills necessary to be successful as an accountant.
Mhm.
But if they're not comfortable in that work environment, they will not be successful.
Yeah, they're not going to thrive.
Yeah.
And speaking of environment, when the pandemic hit, it became more apparent um, that there was some kind of resistance because, again, humans are creatures of habit.
Yeah.
And doing a remote kind of setup or a hybrid, there
Yeah.
are great resistance across all industries, I
Yes.
would say.
Well, and
Now
I'll
it's a
give you a
little bit more
personal
accepted.
example there. I think
Yeah.
that's, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you up, but I'm going to give you a perfect example that happened in our household. So I'm married. My wife at the time was a teacher. She was a classroom teacher. She, like all of us, had to start working from home. She thrived in that environment. I got her a standing desk. She had multiple screens. She had her room set up. She loved teaching remotely, and it just worked with her. She got so creative with it. I
Mhm.
struggled every day working from home. I begged my employer to let me at least come back to the building so I could work in my office. I hated every minute of it. I did not like working from home. I wanted to be in that office, even if people were there, only there part-time. That we experience right in our own home. Because
Mhm.
again, that small detail, again, speaking to environment,
Mhm.
that's not a good environment for me. Being remote and having that distance, I struggle with that. I have to have that work environment to be in. She, on the other hand, she thrived in it. She loved it, really enjoyed it. Her students got so much out of it. It was a wonderful experience. For me, it's like, oh gosh, I hate this.
And now that you have your own company, I suppose the office is now at home. How did you
No,
navigate that?
the office is here. The first thing we did was we got office space about 10 minutes from our house. My
Mhm.
office is here. We've got a suite. My wife's office is out there. Uh,
Mhm.
but funny thing is, someday she'll tell me, honey, I think I'm just going to work from home today. And she does. Guess what? I never say, honey, I'm going to work from home today. I never. I drive the 10 minutes to here and I
Mhm.
love being in this office and having all this stuff around me. So even now, when I could work from home, forget it. I still come to the office every day.
I suppose, some people are just really would have a better mind space
Yes.
when they're in the professional work setting as well.
Yes.
And I know some people too would prefer the interaction with
Yes.
other human beings rather than just being I would say I'm kind of like a lone wolf myself, so I didn't
Yeah.
mind being alone during the pandemic. Um, but like my husband on the other hand is like, how are you surviving there?
Exactly. Yes. Because even here, even if it's just me here and she works from home, I walk around this building sometimes, our office building, just see our neighbors and
Mhm.
hey, just to see people. I'll walk around our downtown just to kind of be around people and see people because I need a little bit of that. I don't, I think there's some good isolation. I certainly get some good work done here, like you say, where I can just sit in front of this computer. There's no animals around. There's nothing happening. But
Yeah.
at a point, I need that contact. And I think that too is a good lesson to employers to say, kind of what we're talking about. Maybe you were leading to this to say, find out where, everybody's got kind of this happy medium and let's see where we can make this work. And again, not trying to steer the interview, but that's the thing that comes to mind for me when I talk to leaders to say, get to know your people a little bit. What works for them?
Right. Actually, that leads me to my next question. How do you build that cohesive culture and environment, especially now that it's kind of like more accepted to have that hybrid setup or more, remotely? Have you worked with any organizations recently who are navigating that or
Yeah.
who are considering of having that kind of setup? Like if someone is listening here that may be in the same situation, what would you recommend or what kind of like advice would you give?
Well, I'm gonna say something that I found is kind of radical.
Hmm.
Talk to your employees. Ask them, hey, we've got this hybrid setup, or we're all working remote. How can we make this still feel like we're a team and that we've got each other's back and that we're supporting each other and
Hmm.
so on? And then as an organization, you make the investment, which is typically minimal, into whatever that takes. And again, you listen to what people need and you respond to that. For some people, it's just a matter of having, a chat up. And hey, if I've got a question, can I just need to be able to shoot Haley a quick chat message or, um, hey, if I need to, can I just call you real quick? Just having those little things. I find that in asking, which again,
Mhm.
that's what I always recommend, is just talk to your team, find out what works.
Mhm.
That the solutions are typically small. They're very small things. Hey, it's do some little special things. So we've had it and having those situations where we send our employees, okay, we're going to do a group lunch, but we can't do it in person. So we send them all a gift card and they get their lunch and we do something like this and we all have lunch together and we just take a little break. We can't
Mhm.
do it physically together, but the company paid for the lunch and we kind of hop online here and we do this. So it's asking and listening and just responding to what it is. And some people, and again, I probably fall into that category as well. If I've got to work everybody remote, I don't need a lot of special handling, but I do need to know that if I need to reach out to Haley, I can get in touch with her.
Mhm.
If I can ask questions, there's a good way to share information back and forth or documents or whatever. Maybe there's a common place that we can sort of meet as we need things. As long as I have that, I'm fine with that. But you and I both know some people, maybe they need, hey, I just need to talk to my boss every day. So guess what, Mr. and Mrs. Boss, set up a 5 minute or 10 minute touch base first thing in the morning, just to, again, pick on Haley here. Hey, Haley likes to kind of have a quick little touch base in the morning. Big deal. Okay. Hey, Haley, good morning. Hey, how you doing? How's everything going today? Is there anything I can do for you? Any challenges you're facing that I can help you with? Any questions? And you have a little bit of a conversation. 5 minutes. Haley's like, no, I think I'm good. Everything's good for today. I'll see you tomorrow or I'll check back if I need anything. Click. And that's all it takes. So
Mhm.
again, ask the questions, listen to the answers. Most of the time, it's not going to be something that's going to be a real heavy lift from a resource standpoint or a cost standpoint, but
Mhm.
employees like to be heard. That's a funny thing. Would they like to be heard and they like to have people respond to that? Or if
Mhm.
it's something they're asking for that just can't be accomplished, see what you can do. What can we do with this? Hey, boy, I wish we could meet in person every month. Well, Haley,
Mhm.
I wish we could too. That'd be a little bit of a stretch for our organization. How about
Mhm.
this? Twice a year, we bring everybody together in Columbus and we meet as a team and we have, food and everything come in and we just get together that. "Oh, okay, yeah, I can do that." So it's being open and being creative with that as well.
And how often would you recommend to ask these kinds of questions, to have these kind of like touch base with your employees as well?
Yeah,
Especially
great
if the
question.
organization is big. Like,
Yes. So certainly anytime you add new people, you do any sort of a reorg, someone gets a promotion, any sort of an organization or group change. And
mhm.
keep in mind too, we're pushing this down to that group level. So this isn't necessarily the CEO saying, okay, I've got 500 employees. Let me find out how they want to do this. It's moreover the CEO saying, okay, my head of marketing, I want you to take this on. My head of sales, I want you to do this. The head of accounting, head of, and then pushing that down to those lower levels to where, okay, Haley's the head of marketing, right? And Haley's got a team of 10 people. Well, Haley talks to her team and says, okay, guys, we're all remote here. We're all hybrid. How can we make this work for everybody? Just personally, professionally, and so on. So those conversations are taking place in those smaller groups because, and you sort of hinted at this earlier with your guy that was used to making outbound and now inbound. These groups also have their own personalities, right? We
Mhm.
see it all the
Mhm.
time. You go into a sales meeting, gosh, they're talking, it's lively, it's whatever. You go into the
Type
accounting and
A.
finance meeting, yeah, it's low key. Everybody's yeah, operations kind of the same way. So these
Mhm.
groups have their own personalities. So the what works for one group may not work for another. So all
Mhm.
the more reason to have your leaders at the next levels, let them talk to their group because
Right.
Haley's team may say, yeah, I want to get together every Friday and let's touch
Mhm.
base and we can eat our lunch and we can do a brown bag with it. And then you talk to your accounting team and say, oh my God, please, let's not do that. Give me a chat. If I need Haley, I can chat her.
Mhm.
Um, you know what? If we need to get together as a team, I'm willing to do that once a month. So again, you're listening and you're responding accordingly and realizing that not only is every team different, every person's a little bit different. And where can we strike a happy medium?
Right, right. Totally agree with that. It's important to delegate if you're the CEO or the founder,
Yeah.
And it's important as a CEO or founder that you find yourself great managers, because a great manager would be able to handle and manage different personalities as well, just as the
Bingo.
example that you mentioned. Because, there are certain individuals who prefer like just to be on their own, who may have
Right.
a little bit of, reservation as well when it comes to like group setting, like what works well. That's a win-win situation for everyone.
Well, I'll give you a
Find
funny
that happy
story about
medium.
that. I'm going to give you a funny story around that, Haley. You made me think of one. So, one of the organizations that I worked with had a group of programmers. Okay. They were all in the office, which again, a little unusual, but they were all in the office. They would do virtual meetings. Yes, you heard me right. They were all in the office, all in the same place, but they still did virtual meetings. Again, that's what everybody wanted. The boss, okay, then that's guess what? That's what we're gonna do. Hey, as long as we're meeting and we're talking and we do what we got to do, he was fine with that. And
That's
it worked for
interesting.
them. They could literally be sitting right next to the person, but they're still on the virtual meeting. Yeah,
That's pretty cool. That's a,
it
that's a,
was.
an interesting culture. Well, if it works for them,
It
great.
did. And it did. The team loved it. They were perfectly happy with it. Everybody was fine. Didn't have to leave their desk, didn't have to whatever. They were right there. If they needed to share something on the screen, they could.
Mhm.
Loved it. Loved it.
Now, speaking of like virtual remote setting, let's talk a little bit about AI. With
Yeah.
AI and automation entering the workforce, I think it's already started like a year ago or maybe 2 years ago.
Yeah.
How do you see the role of HR now becoming? Does it become more about managing robots, or does the human element become even more premium?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because it's something I've spoken about a lot.
Mhm.
And for me, I think AI provides a tremendous opportunity for us to repair our reputation a little bit.
Mm,
Because I think one thing as a profession HR has gotten away from is being known as really good at working with people. And that's how odd is that? But it's
mhm,
true. Because how many people do you talk to that say, like I said earlier, I only interact with HR when they were going to terminate me or when they told me I did something wrong.
mhm,
Or
mhm,
here's what we hear from candidates all the time. I never even heard from HR. I applied for this job. They never got back to me. Or HR
mhm,
interviewed me and they never let me know what happened. I don't know. They didn't even send me a message to let me know I wasn't being considered anymore. So what I
mhm,
tell my HR professionals is, guys, use that AI technology to do those menial things really well because that's what it's good at, right? I can tell it, I can create all these if-then statements and I can train that AI to be really good at answering and doing basic things. Now you get out of your seat and go around and start talking to your employees and pick up the phone and reach out to those candidates and talk to them. And when Haley applies for a job and we've interviewed her and we decide we're not going to hire her, let Haley know why. Haley, we really appreciate your interest in the organization. We certainly appreciate you taking the time to interview us with us
mhm,
for this particular position. We've chosen to move forward with another candidate, and here's why. This candidate had this particular experience that we were looking for or whatever. But you know what, Haley? We were totally impressed with you. We were completely impressed with you. Would
mhm,
you mind if we kept your information on file as we have other opportunities open and we reach out to you? Because we'd love to stay in contact with you. And Haley,
mhm,
as I always say, and this is my quote, by the way, Haley, it's
mhm,
never no, it's just not right now. And I really see you as someone that we'd love to have join the organization in the
mhm,
future in the right role. And guess what Haley's going to say? Yes. And you know what Haley also is going to say? God, that's a heck of a company. I'd love to work for them.
mhm,
AI allows us the time to make that call and make that personal connection with
mhm,
Haley that quite literally maybe takes me a minute
mhm,
because AI does all these rudimentary things. It's scheduling candidates for interviews, it's sending out the communications, it's doing all these basic things that I got muddled up with before.
mhm,
Employees are able to use an AI chatbot to ask a basic question about benefits or whatever. That way, when Haley again. The benefits question. So AI can answer the basic questions. Hey, how often is the deductions taken out for my healthcare benefits? It can answer that.
mhm,
But let's
mhm,
say Haley comes to me and says, Kyle, my question is a little bit more difficult. I've had this particular event happen. I need someone to walk me through it. Okay, have a seat, Haley. And then I've got the time to answer your more personalized,
mhm,
specific question that requires personal handling because my AI bot has taken care of, how often do we take the benefits out? When's open enrollment? All these basic questions that
Mhm, mhm.
are just, I can pull it from a handbook and do that.
Repetitive and
Exactly. Because then I'm able to give you the personal care that you need because Haley's, if you don't mind me giving you this example, Haley's getting ready to have a baby and she never had a baby before. She wants to know how do I navigate our benefits? What do I do? That's where I come in because that situation's unique and I can walk you through it. Let
Mhm,
AI handle the question about, like you say, the repetitive, easy stuff.
mhm,
So again, AI is going to allow us to elevate our HR game so it becomes about these people interactions and giving this special care that Haley as employee needs or Haley as candidate needs so we can beef up our retention efforts, beef up our employment brand, and where we really should be focused as HR professionals.
mhm. And would you be able to tell right away when working with businesses, or founders and like CEOs, have you encountered anyone who doesn't share the same values about the importance of really caring about their people?
Yeah.
Um, like the essence of human in the human relation in a
Yes.
business?
Yes, I have. Unfortunately, we've seen it here a couple of times. And if we find that organizationally there's not a good match between our philosophy, my philosophy, and the
Mhm,
organization, we'll either not partner with them if we find it out sooner enough, or we'll just end the relationship. And we have done that on a couple of occasions. And I'll give you a quick example to where it's coming to play. So we had an organization that we were working with, and again, this is something we've gotten away from, but we were
mhm,
helping them find some staff, right? And
mhm,
again, that's not something we do now, but we were doing it early on.
mhm,
And I got some feedback from candidates relative to their interview experience that I didn't like. And in talking with the employer about that, that seemed to be their norm. That seemed to be how they chose to do business. And at that point, I let them know that we could no longer do business together. And I ended that relationship.
mhm.
So that's the long answer to your question. The short answer is yes. That's the beauty of being in business for yourself. But secondly, that enables me to fully exercise my skills because quite frankly, I'm not going to be a good resource or a good partner for them either. Then they're not going to be a good partner for me, but I'm also not going to be a good partner for them
Mhm.
because I can't even imagine how I could effectively work with them to do what it is they want to do because we're wired differently. And that's
That,
okay.
yeah, yeah. That all boils down to, again, the culture. Like
Yes.
what kind of culture or working environment do you want to hone in the business?
And it's amazing. And I think especially small business owners, they don't see this, but how much their personality and their interaction style and all these other things, how much it rubs off on their employees. I mean, I've seen it down to, and I kid you not, how people dress and how they act and how they talk to each other
Mhm,
based upon the tone and tenor that owner of that business or the president or whoever it is, depending on the size of the business, how much influence they really have on the
mhm,
people around them. And it absolutely influences the culture.
mhm. That's important to have that kind of integrity as well as a
Right.
leader. What kind of example do you want to lead by?
Exactly. Well, and to own it and to be aware of it. And I've had those conversations with leaders as well to let them know, hey, this is how people see you. Like this is when you act like this is what it is they're seeing, or this is the interpretation. Because I've had leaders before that, blow off the handle really quickly and so on. And again, I'll go talk to them. And again, it's not about we're grown adults. It's not about me saying, Haley, don't you dare. It's none
Yeah.
of that. It's
Mhm,
more of a Haley, hey, do you have a few minutes I'd like to talk to you about something? I
mhm,
want to let you know, when you blew up the other day, and again, don't misunderstand, Haley. I just want to talk to you about this. When you blew up the other day, here was kind of the fallout of that. And I don't know if that's what you want to have happen or that, but I want to make sure that at least you're aware of this is what's happening when you do this.
mhm, mhm.
And, this is just us talking. And, in my role, Haley, I have a responsibility to let you know about these kind of things. I'm not passing any judgment at all about you, who you are, what you're about. I just want to let you know this is what happens when you do that.
Yeah.
So it's having those kind of conversations because you have to. In my role, in my capacity, I have to.
Yeah, and it's important as well because the first step to change is creating awareness. If
Yeah,
someone is not, that could be someone's blind spot. They're not aware. They see that
exactly.
situation differently, whereas with other people, this is how it actually came to play. So,
Oh, exactly.
yeah, what a masterclass, Kyle, on human relations and culture a- amidst, as we head towards more AI powered um, work environment. Any final words for our audience?
Well, I guess the final words that I would say, a couple of things. One, get out there and talk to your employees. I think that's the biggest thing a lot of times that I coach leaders on. Just have those conversations, sit in the lunchroom, walk around the facility, do those things, get to know your employees and who they are and what you're about, what they're about. Let them
Mhm.
know a little bit more about you and so on. Certainly, I'd be remiss if I didn't make a pitch for our business. We
Mhm.
love working with organizations on this process. We love to see people reach their goals, organizations reach their goals and be successful. And we enjoy being part of that. And we realize every organization has its own personality and we really work with that. We don't try to impose our beliefs or wills or ideas or whatever. We try to work with the organization to help them be successful.
And how can they find you if they want to
I
reach
was
out?
hoping you'd ask that. So I'm gonna make it easy
First,
for
I
them. Couple
would
of ways.
ask that.
One, I love to get personal emails, and guess what? I do something kind of odd. When people send me an email, I actually respond. So I do that. So if you send me an email, I'm going to respond. So my email is kyle@hrkyle.com. Okay. They can certainly reach our office by 330-541-5533, or they can visit our website to learn a little bit more about us at hrkyle.com.
Wonderful. And we'll definitely share all those information in the show notes. Kyle, again, thank you. It's been a pleasure. You've been an absolutely phenomenal guest of ours, teaching our audience about, again, the importance of human relation, regardless whether it's a remote setting, in person, small business, big organizations. It's putting the element of human in everything,
That's
basically.
exactly right. Doesn't get
Yeah.
any more complicated than that. Haley, it's been my pleasure. I was, as I said, I was really looking forward to this, and I've enjoyed our conversation a great deal.
It's been my pleasure. Whether you have two employees or 200, the lesson today is clear. Culture doesn't happen by accident, it happens by design. And you can reach out to Kyle, who's the master in this business. Thank you for sharing your blueprint with us on this podcast.
Thank you.